designers. And what that means is that they often would kind of prefer to stay designing
Yeah.
and not have to think about those kinds of things and not have to work on those things. And again, honestly, because there's been so much need and demand for designers in general, a lot of people have been kind of pushed into leadership roles without a lot of preparation, without a lot of experience, and a lot of people end up in design leadership roles without ever having worked with a design leader that they could successfully model themselves on. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
well, I was the first designer hired by the company, and the company was so successful that they needed to hire three more designers. I was the only person who knew anything about design, so I ended up as their manager. And here I am 5 years later, and I'm head of design, and I don't even know what that means or how to do that job. I've never even worked for a head of design before.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Do you think it's connected to the skills or characteristics of a designer? We said that they are more creative, they're thinking
Yeah,
open-mindedly, high level, visually,
yeah,
which in sometimes when you need to be in leadership roles, you need to be more practical. You need to know how to persuade, to speak, to tell a story.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that you can't expect people to come meet you where you are as a design leader. You have to go to where they are, which means that you have to meet them at their level of sophistication, meet them at their level of understanding. And that, in turn, means that you have to have more than one way to tell your story. You can't rely on just one perfect formulation of what you're trying to do and expect everybody to buy into that. You have to be flexible and indeed adaptive enough to be able to spin it and to be able to understand how to communicate with lots of different kinds of teams that have different kinds of communication styles. I meet a lot of people who see the way that communication happens, especially at the executive level in a lot of these large organizations, where executives are moving through so many decisions at such a clip that they don't have time for depth. And for a lot of designers, a decision maker who doesn't have time for depth is just it's anathema to the way that we're used to making decisions. And we have to be able to shake off that those sort of moments of culture shock, cultural friction that
Yeah.
happen as we come out of our design culture and we engage in the larger business culture and trying to get things done.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the challenges the design leader face today. We said some of them. We discussed some of them. Did we miss some of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I in my in the early days when we first started out with Adaptive Path and we were evangelizing user experience inside organizations, the main thing that people needed support with was championing the idea of user experience inside their organizations. And so at Adaptive Path, a lot of our work as consultants was like, how do we turn people into the best possible internal champions for these ideas that they can be, so that the ideas can continue to advance and grow. Then, as that as we sort of moved out of that phase of the development of the field and the practice, we started to get to the place where we were now sort of championing processes and practices, the best way to do it. Now, we've gotten everybody to agree that we should do it. Now it's how. And so there was just like this whole long stretch of evangelism around practices and different methods for eliciting user insights and different methods for prototyping and different methods for creating more efficient approaches to delivery. That's how UX got all mixed up with Agile. And so it was very sort of methodological there for a while. But in the last few years, we've gotten to a place where the methods are pretty mature and the practices are pretty well understood and pretty well documented. And there are enough people with enough experience doing this to be able to confirm, yeah, we actually have some things figured out from a methodological perspective. We have some ideals figured out. The realities are, of course, always messier than the ideals that
Yeah.
we're reaching for. And that was actually, it was that realization was part of the shift for me toward being a leadership coach, because so Adapt Path, the consultancy that I co-founded, was acquired by the bank Capital One here in the United States in 2014, and I was working in-house, working alongside a lot of different leaders across all of their Capital One's different business units. And I came to realize that, it wasn't a lack of expertise. It wasn't a lack of skill. It wasn't a lack of knowledge. It wasn't a lack of process that was holding the teams that were less successful back. What was holding those teams back were the skills of the leader, and their ability, especially their ability to hold a team together through difficult times, to prevent whatever the storms are that might be sort of battering the ship at the moment, to kind of be able to prevent that stuff from actually affecting the team's ability to get the job done and get to where they're going. And what I found in my experience working with the leaders within Capital One was that an enormous amount of that, again, really depended on their skill at relationship development. How effectively were they able to cultivate and manage their relationships with all of the different partners that design needs to intersect with in the course of product development? The product people, the engineering people, the business people, all of those kinds of relationships. How effectively